Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Florence Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. It's good to be with you here today. Before we start our service, let us acknowledge that we stand here today on the native, traditional land of the first people of Florence, the Siuslaw Indians. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the members of the Siuslaw tribe, past, present, and future. We're going to begin today, as we always do, regardless of what's going on, with our Spirit of Life. I invite two of you to come forward, and those who are here today for this recording, stand as you are able, and let's sing Spirit of Life.
Getting used to it once again. And let us join in together with Spirit. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving light the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Come to me.
Thank you, Tuvia. Thank you very, very much. So, for those who are here today, you don't have to do this at home while you're watching this, but let's turn off all of our cellular devices and those annoying things that go bump in the night. So by now you've all received communication that we have suspended our in-person worship services on Sunday for the next 90 days. We've taken a step back, but we're not going backwards, but a step back in time, and have resumed recording our services on Friday. So we are recording this service today, Friday, August 27th. Keep that in mind as you watch this on Sunday, August 29th. You should get this in your inbox by 3 a.m. Sunday the 29th. And hopefully you can enjoy it with a cup of coffee, okay? Join us here at FOOF on Sundays at 11:30. We may not be doing a service, but we're going to meet in the backyard. We're going to open up the gates, invite you in, bring a little lunch, bring some beverage, bring a chair, and let's do our social gathering outside, socially distanced and very respectful. Also, Sunday, the 29th at 11:30, Karen Hernandez and I will be leading a what we call new member orientation, where we get to talk about Unitarian Universalism, share a little bit of the history of FOOF, and have opportunities for you to ask questions and find out whether or not you want to remain an extraordinary friend or do you want to explore full-blown membership. There is no bloodletting in that. It's just a matter of signing the book and making a commitment with your time, talent, and treasure. You'll learn more about that on Sunday at 11:30. Coming up, the Fog will gather here at 10 a.m. and folks will drive to Lake Marie for a stroll around that lovely area. That's September 1st. September 7th, Dean Schrock will host his Zoom, what's he call it? Connecting with Your Soul meditation at 5:15 on Zoom. You can go to the FOOF calendar, our website, click on the calendar, click on the date, and you will find a link to that particular Zoom invitation. There was one other thing I wanted to remind us of. I'll think about it later, but does anybody here have any announcements? Hearing none, I invite Reverend Dennis Reynolds to come forward as I light our chalice and he shares our words.
Thank you, Sally, and it's good to be with you in whatever way works in a particular time. in this time. The words of our chalice lighting are from the Reverend Dr. Paul Carnes, who in the mid-20th century was part of a commission in our Unitarian Universalist Association, who wrote a report titled The Free Church in a Changing World. It continues to change. He wrote, "What is essential is never to allow the limitations of time and the erosion of memories to deaden the longings of our heart in its dawning demand for love." Its dawning demand for love. I invite you now, wherever you are, wherever your here is, to join us in a simple chant. It's gathered here. For anyone who has a hymnal, it's 389 in the hymnal. And the words are pretty straightforward and simple. It's simply, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and in the power. So we'll repeat that through 4 or 5 times, and it's simply a chant. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Now, many of you will want a higher range than mine. So whatever works in your vocal range, let's try it 4 times together. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. One more time. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. To aid us in that process of drawing your spirit more near, I invite you into a time of shared meditation, of shared breathing. Because wherever we are, one of the amazing, almost magical elements of this time is we can breathe together when we're miles apart.
Yeah.
We can breathe in together, we can breathe out together, because one of the things we're all present to is we're present here. We're present wherever that here is for you in this precious moment. And we're here right now. And if you log in right on time at 10:30 on Sunday morning, we're experiencing the same now together. So I invite you in that spirit of just breathing in with a sense of here. And breathe out with a sense of now. Here. Now. Together breathing in silence. Here. I invite you to take one cleansing breath in and out, and staying present. And this time, as Sally and others will be sharing more information about the life of the congregation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a time of the ceremony where we remind ourselves of the power of intention, the intention of supporting each other and our loving community. We do this by listening with an open heart and an open mind. We do this by taking a chance to reveal our vulnerability when we need to, because we know we are safe here. I'd like to start, Ms. Sally, with a large shell for Jude Conklin Craddock, who asked for some prayers and some positive energy to be sent her way as she is going through some serious emotional times right now. And just shoot out some good love if you don't mind. And does anyone have anything to share today? If so, please line up, and Miss Sally will hand you the microphone. Or not, as the case may be.
I think we have no one to share.
We have no one to share. We always have
No, I
someone
have
to
something
share.
to share.
Oh, please.
I would like to drop a shell. Thursday night, Ruth Miller hosted our Soul Matters workshop. It's the last Thursday of every month. We have a curriculum we review, and the curriculum this time was all about intention. And I'm telling you, it was really, really cool. The material is just, it's enormous, almost to the point of overload, but you find little nuggets in there, and you practice something in that particular curriculum, and you get something out of it. And the thing that I did, and most joyful about, is it said, go take a 10-minute meditation walk. And I thought, well, now what the heck could that be? So I thought, okay, I can take 10 minutes. I'll walk around my house a couple of times and see what comes up. So I went out the back door, turned right, walked down the step, very quietly, very nice. Then 15 seconds, and I looked up, and I saw my huckleberry bushes overflowing with huckleberries. And I thought, now if I hadn't done this 10-minute meditation walk, I don't think I'd noticed those huckleberries. So I finished my meditation walk, got my clippers out, and I harvested several pints of huckleberries and enjoyed those for breakfast this morning. So that is my big joy for the huckleberries and for the Soul Matters workshop.
It's terrific.
Thank you.
And this last shell is for all the people that we don't know about. We always include you. If you can hear my voice, either here or on the recording or in the echoes of your own head, you are included. Even if you don't listen, just having this thought of the ceremony, knowing that this goes on every week for you, and you're including in our loving circle always. And I just want to leave this with, just be kind, especially now that we are all on this roller coaster of crazy, and we don't know where each other are sitting in the roller coaster. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Our reading for this morning is from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is where we are.
Where do we go from here?
First, we must massively assert our worth and dignity.
We must stand up amidst a system that still oppresses us and develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values.
What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive.
And love without power is sentimental and anemic.
Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice.
Yes, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice.
And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love.
This is what we must see as we move on.
The Reverend Dr. King advised us that this is what we must see. And yet, seeing clearly what we must see is a daunting and a necessary calling. I often, though, find it hard to figure out which way to go, what direction to follow, what path to take as I seek the answers to life's questions, the questions of how best might I be the loving, caring person I strive to be? How best can I be the justice-loving person I aspire to be? How might I be part of crafting and shaping a future that better serves those whom I love, as well as those whom I have never met, especially those who have not been well served in the past nor in the present? I look first within, seeking my own deeper understanding in my place in the world of things and of acts. Sometimes, especially when the decisions and the crossroads I face are simple and clear, I can't get there on my own. I have, after all, spent a lifetime learning and growing and constructing meaning and mostly finding my own way through the world. Sometimes the path forward is well marked by the work of others. They show me the way. Often, though, especially when the way is less clear, perhaps obscured by the fog of dissenting views or the clouds of my own confusion, I find I must stop a while to rest and reconnoiter, hoping that in time the fog will burn away and the clouds might lift, or I might actually see the huckleberries. Sometimes my own thoughts and deeds help me to clear the way. Sometimes things get clearer all on their own through just the passing of time or other changes outside of the realm of my doing or my knowing. Sometimes I head off in the wrong direction. Perhaps because that used to be the way to go, before others created different pathways that intersected with mine and before the world changed all around me. The way forward now is frequently not the same way forward it was in times past. Perhaps the way forward of just a couple of weeks ago is not the way forward now. The way forward I need to find, all of us need to find, is all too often again the well-worn path of past habits and practices, but either a new way or a seldom used pathway we at other times might have avoided. When I encounter the daunting realities of our time, I look to others for suggestions as how to move forward or when and where to go, perhaps on a divergent path. Now, such a pathway might be a path that, especially at the beginning, is thorny and difficult, and the going can be difficult. When it seems such a path might indeed be the best option, I confidently, though, can take it, knowing that I will not need to take such a path alone, because I'm part of a faith community and part of a spiritual and religious movement that has committed to just such an interweaving of love and power as that which the Reverend Dr. King spoke of in today's reading. We need to acknowledge, though, that not everyone is going to go with us on such a journey towards more inclusive justice. For though there are those who feel their own self-interest is best served by just keeping things the way they are, the way they have been, or who feel that for them things were even better a decade or a generation ago. Working for a kind of justice that, as Reverend Dr. King described it, seeks to connect everything that stands against love. Seeks to correct everything that stands against love is often not consistent with simply going with the flow, of taking the easy way, of seeking agreement, or accepting compromising half measures that are anemic, inadequate. Sometimes the way forward is indeed the difficult path, the thorny path. Sometimes we might be at odds with others as we seek a new and different path that is truly open and welcoming to all. Sometimes The path forward is a series of starts and misstarts when we begin and then go back because we encounter an obstacle. That's a wise way to travel. Yet a way forward is what we must see as we move on. Sometimes we might find ourselves causing some discord and some trouble for others. This is often a good thing. The civil rights activist and U.S. Congressman John Lewis asked us to get into good trouble.
Yeah.
Necessary trouble, and as he said it, good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. Often, as we seek to dismantle systems of oppression and limitations, we find that such work, which is at the core of our efforts to dismantle everything that stands in the way of love, that sometimes we might get in trouble. At the very least, we will likely ruffle some feathers and will make some people, perhaps even ourselves, uncomfortable.
Yes.
When I think about such comfort, though, I think about how it's similar to physical exercise, especially when we're just beginning or renewing an exercise routine. It can be uncomfortable when we start exercising again, and yet working with and being present to the discomfort can make us stronger, both physically stronger and a bit more persistent. I think persistence, be it in exercise or in doing justice work, is a kind of muscle that gets stronger with repeated work. Sometimes getting in trouble, making trouble, can be as much about what we choose not to do as what we do. Sometimes effective action can be to simply walk away. This is true in many personal habits and in working for justice. It is better for my health when I walk away, step back from those sugary desserts or that extra microbrew that I love so very much. But it's better when I step back. In justice work, boy counts can be highly effective. Over time, we can learn how to step up and how to step back as needs arise. In our Sunday sermon at this year's General Assembly at the Unitarian Universalists Association of the Universalist Association titled Until Love Wins, Reverend Karen Hult, it's a sermon that I no doubt some of you might have heard, and if you haven't, I recommend you Google UUAGA Sunday Sermon 2021 to check it out. Anyway, in her sermon, she lifts up a play titled A Day of Absence by the playwright Douglas Turner Ward that describes such an action, a kind of stepping back. Anyway, in the play, which takes place in a small southern community at an undefined time, the white residents of the village wake up to discover that all the black people have left town. They have simply disappeared, walked away somewhere. The remaining white population, who in the play, which is I think a fascinating piece of directorial decision-making, in the play, the white members of the community are played by black actors in white face. Now, those white people, though, are appearing to be white people, are not quite sure how to proceed. The normal day-to-day lives have been significantly disrupted. Reverend Hult offers specific excerpts from the play as examples of a kind of disruption of the status quo that implies a strategy she calls fugitivity, which she affirms is a strategy that can be employed particularly by people of color, who, as Tate describes it, in the midst of white supremacy culture, find leadership hard to obtain. Fugitivity embodies, she says, a sort of escaping. People who feel dismissed or marginalized might choose to simply absent themselves from places where such things occur. I remember a film, and it was originally a short piece and then became a full feature-length film early in this century by the director Sergio Au. It was titled A Day Without Mexicans. That play, it plays with a similar premise. In the film, all of California wakes up one day and notices a complete absence of people of Mexican descent. Their absence creates a disruption that sometimes is portrayed as humorous and sometimes rather heartbreaking at the same time. Now, there are examples within our Unitarian Universalist movement's history of real life, not merely fictional acts of fugitivity. In 1967, in what was called the Black Empowerment Controversy, most of the people of color at that year's General Assembly walked out in the midst of a heated dispute in which they could see no way forward. Some of them walked out never to return to Unitarian Universalism. Others, like the Reverend William Bill Singford, in time came back. Singford was able to obtain a leadership position some 30 years later. He served from 2001 to 2009 as president of our association. Earlier, though, even though he had grown up in a UU church in Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, I have to remember that. I have a plate from the Cincinnati church on my wall near my kitchen because my wife also attended that same church and knew Singford's family. Even though he had grown up UU for many years, he stayed away from our movement because he was not sure there was a place for him in Unitarian Universalism. He in time returned. Some additional Black UUs have returned in the last couple of years after they witnessed the UUA beginning to struggle with and encouraging congregations to also wrestle with the deep and broad questions of white supremacy and privilege, and how they have shaped the even broader, deeper questions of inclusion and exclusion, centrality and marginalization. The philosopher, Dr. Fred Moten, describes fugitivity as a disavowal and disengagement from normative roles reflecting a desire for a spirit of escaping and transgressing the proper and the proposed. I know I have at times transgressed the proper and the proposed. As a young man, I opposed the policies of my government who advocated for and engaged in a war in Vietnam. I protested, I committed civil disobedience, and for time, I absented myself from the mainstream. I ran away for a year and lived in Hawaii as a hippy-dippy surfer bum, distancing myself from the mainstream of our culture. Many of my LGBTQ friends have experienced fugitivity in a culture where the proper and proposed has all too often offered no room for them and their expressions of love. Fugitivity, Tate contends, is sometimes necessary for Blacks who find refuge in independent, self-reflective communities of color, and in her experience in Unitarian Universalism. Tate describes her own coming into UU as a way to escape any proposed notions of religiosity, superstition, and trickery, like those she had experienced in other faith traditions. Tate was and is what might describe as a fugitive from creedal religiosity, in which one might believe in such religiosity, one is expected to believe and share allegiance to what is deemed proper and proposed. We are different than that here at UU. We are a non-creedal faith. The fourth principle of our faith calls for us to covenant and affirm a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Throughout our history, such a search has often created a climate of fugitivity. Michael Servetus, who some call the first Unitarian, spent much of his life as a fugitive. Michael Servetus was a Spaniard. His given name would likely have been Miguel Serveto. He was a pretty amazing individual. He was a theologian, a physician, a cartographer, a Renaissance humanist. In medicine, he was the first European to correctly describe the function of pulmonary circulation. He was versed in many sciences, in mathematics, in astronomy, in meteorology, geography, anatomy, medicine, pharmacology, as well as law and poetry. And he engaged in the scholarly study of the Bible in its original languages. This man of the Renaissance was truly a Renaissance man. Serveto's explorations of the Bible led to his fugitivity. In his readings of Scripture, he could find no biblical evidence for the existence of the Trinity, a concept lifted up by the Catholic Church as creedal truth. His interpretation of Scripture was that God was one. The notion he proposed we call Unitarianism. Unitarianism was considered by the Catholic Church to be a heresy. Serveto was sanctioned by the Holy Inquisition in order to recant his teachings. Instead, his conscience called him to take on the life of a fugitive. He fled from his original hometown. He continued to write, but he did so as a fugitive, traveling from city to city and country to country. There is an account of when the Inquisition did catch up with him someplace in Italy. They locked him in a room upstairs in an inn while awaiting transport to a dungeon or a prison. He jumped out of the second-story window and ran off and escaped. He ended up fleeing to Switzerland. This country was beyond the reach of the Inquisition. But John Calvin, then a religious and political leader in the city, had him arrested and tried. He was convicted of heresy. In 1553, he was burned at the stake with the texts that he had written strapped to his thighs. Some call him our first Unitarian Universalist martyr. Now, throughout the centuries, many other Unitarians and Universalists have been considered religious fugitives and heretics. I remember when I served a congregation in Humboldt County, California, and signed on as with other liberal clergy as a clergy for choice letter published in the local newspaper, I received emails and letters condemning me for my heretical thoughts and teachings. In the earliest 20th century of America, the new Unitarian minister John Dietrich reluctantly told his good Baptist parents of his change of faith. He reported that his mother would have rather have heard that he had died than to become a Unitarian. Because you see, if he had died, then he would spend eternity in heaven. But as a heretic, he was certainly going to burn in hell forever. Now, our Universalist forebears, who dared challenge the notion of how a loving God could condemn anyone to hellfire, were also deemed heretics. They likewise were cast out of their churches and often their families for such heresies. Bits of a history of fugitivity have been reflected in smaller ways in many of our lives. The limitations of the proposed and proper have distanced us sometimes from family and other friends. They've created changes in workplaces and other settings that necessitated fugitivity sometimes from our own identities of who we truly are. Fugitivity, though, can also become an effective strategy in deepening our sense of self. Withdrawal can offer places to affirm one's own sense of self. We need affinity groups place where fugitives might gather together with similar fugitives. Groups for people of color, LGBTQ groups, youth groups, elder circles, women's groups, and men's groups. In several men's groups I have been part of over the years, I've grown in my own acceptance of being a man who does not always meet society's notions of the proposed and proper norms of how I'm expected to be. In those groups, I found a place to escape to and to transgress the power of the proper and the proposed. As Unitarian Universalists, we seek to create beloved community wherein free expression of thought, spirit, and love flourish. Sometimes the process of doing that work offers us a clear path forward, and sometimes we change path. The decision this fellowship made to begin and then to step back from in-person worship is an example. Yet in a faith community, as a fellowship and as individuals, we're in this for the long haul, my friends. I'd like to close today with some more words from John Lewis. Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. So ponder deeply and determine what is your part to do, and then do it.
Thank you, Reverend Dennis. That was a wonderful message. I have taken extensive notes in my brain and on paper, and will be using your wisdom as I go forward. Thank you very, very much. So this is the time when we have our offering, and because we are virtual, this will take on a different feel. We won't be having the basket to pass around, so maybe you can take a jar that you might have at home or a cup and make your offering at home and keep adding to that each week as we go forward. And when we come back together in person, you can bring those contributions with you. So that's one way to do it. So I invite two of you to share a little bit about what's happening with food backpacks for kids.
This is the last opportunity to make a contribution to this very, very worthy cause. And I want you to think about how it will make you feel if you can be responsible for feeding 1, 2, or more children on a weekend. There is no better feeling, and there is no important job that is more important than taking care of our children here in Florence. Backpacks for Kids will enable you to do that. Sally, that's, hope everybody will contribute.
I hope so too, Tuvia. This is, as we mentioned, is the last Sunday we're taking an offering for this particular community endeavor. Next week, we start with a new community partner. The name escapes me at this time, but we'll let you know what that is. We're doing community partners 2 months at a time, and your contributions to that group will be appreciated. Also, I want to remind you there's an opportunity to give to this church. Again, you're at home having your coffee. I hope that you will consider, if you've not done so recently or ever, consider making a contribution to this fellowship. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can send us a check, made payable to FOOF, mail it to P.O. Box 2502, Florence 97439, or you can go on our website, and there's a donate button on the upper right-hand corner. Click on that, and the instructions should be clearer than mud on how to pay through PayPal, but you use your own credit card. And you can then, in the memo section, designate how much you'd like to come to FOOF and how much you'd like to go to our community partner. So it's pretty easy, it's painless, there is no fee involved. FOOF does pay that fee for you. So I encourage you to consider FOOF as your spiritual partner and give as best you can. And with that in mind, as we are here and you at home, if you would repeat after me, divine love through me,
Divine love through me
blesses and multiplies all that I am,
blesses and multiplies all that I am,
all that I give,
all that I give,
and all that I receive.
and all that I receive.
I am prosperous now.
I am prosperous now.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be. I invite Reverend Dennis to come back up. We have a benediction with also, which is the extinguishing of the chalice. So, Dennis, would you like to extinguish the chalice when we get to that place? But let's read this benediction together, shall we?
Indeed.
Okay. We extinguish the chalice, but its light lives on in the hearts and minds and the souls of each one of us.
Let us carry this flame with us and share it with those we know, with those we love, and most especially with those we have yet to meet.
With those you have yet to meet, and there are so many. Shalom, salam.
Amen. And blessed be.
And thank you again, Reverend Dennis Reynolds, for being with us today. Thank you for bringing your sister over. Linda, I hope you enjoyed being with us today. We welcome you back anytime you wish, okay? I invite two of you to come forward. We're going to lead us in our peace song. Two of you want to stand behind the podium and sing it out? Okay, we'll stand back over here. And while two of you is preparing, just remember we have a picnic at 11:30, so come on over to FOOF at 11:30, bring your chair, some food, a beverage, and maybe we'll talk about new member orientation, okay? Okay.
Do think about the words of this song, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with love as our center. keep